Hello all, and welcome in. We're so glad you've joined us for another edition of the Book Nerd Diaries. Life can be rough sometimes, so please pull up a chair here in the library and relax for a while as we dive deep into the latest books we've crossed off our endless to-read list. Please be warned that spoilers lie ahead, and some content might not be suitable for all listeners. So please go check out the show notes for content warnings regarding today's book and discussion before moving ahead with today's episode. Ready? Then let's get our book nerd on. We all wear different types of masks throughout the course of our lives. When you're a kid, you may have waited eagerly for Halloween to arrive, to don a mask and dress up as your favorite character. You may have even gotten to create a mask in art class, or at home, covered with a flurry of brightly colored feathers and sequins. When you grow older, however, you also learn the subtle art of turning your own personality into a mask of sorts. People build all sorts of different relationships throughout their lives, and no two of these relationships are quite alike. Different types of relationships require different things, and so we learn to adjust how we act around different people accordingly. For example, you certainly wouldn't behave around your grandparents or your parents the same way you would around your friends. When you're at work, you'd probably treat your boss far differently than you would a customer or a colleague. When you're by yourself, you're probably far different still than you are when you're around anyone else. The fabulous book that we'll be talking about today, We Are Bound by Stars, by Kesia Lupo, is all about the importance of masks in every form. Not only does the creation of masks play a vital role in the world of the story, there are an awful lot of people going to great lengths to hide their true identities. Let's get this masquerade started, shall we? As our book opens, we are told the story of Fortune. She was a goddess who was betrayed by her fellow deities, then had her divine powers stripped from her, turning her human. She retreats to her home kingdom of the Wishes and bestows magic upon the matriarchs of two prominent families. Soon after Fortune gives her blessing, she passes away, infusing the magic into the very soil of the Wishes. Many years later, the land was overtaken by conquerors who wished to have the land for themselves. The Queen of the Wishes pretends to accept their deal and the demoted title of Contessa, but secretly makes a deal with the god Mithras. The god returns a measure of power back to the Contessa and her descendants in the form of 3 mask makers. These mask makers are triplets, one set of which is born in each generation. The triplets are taken away from their family immediately after their birth, in order to be trained to serve the Contessa. Their task, when the previous generation of mask makers dies, is to create magically infused masks for the defenders of the Wishes. Each mask that is made by the triplets has its own personality of sorts, and grants different types of powers to its wearer, but there is one cardinal rule in their creation. The masks cannot resemble a human face, on risk of the punishment of death. We're next introduced to a young man named Vico, who is getting ready to fight. He is participating in a yearly tournament, the winner of which will receive a prestigious prize known as the Fighter's Crown. He is going head-to-head with an imposing opponent known as the Raven, when the fight is beset by a pack of deadly magical creatures known as Sandwolves. Vico is devastated by the gruesome carnage that the Sandwolves are leaving in their wake around him. Determined to do something about it, he faces down a Sandwolf and attacks it, until it suddenly disappears. After the dust settles, Vico flees the scene with his closest friend, Elisao, who finds an ominous piece of graffiti drawn on a wall, a symbol of a sun, used to signify the Santini clan, and the words, "The revolution is coming," in giant letters. Elsewhere, we find a girl named Beatrice, along with her 2 sisters, Ophelia and Valentina. She is one of the triplet mask makers being trained for their future duty to the crown. The triplets are practicing their mask-making arts under the strict supervision of Priestess Alyssa when they are suddenly called away from their work. The current mask makers, it is explained, are dying. At the moment of their passing, Beatrice and her sisters will inherit their titles, as well as officially inherit their powers. The triplets are brought to their predecessor's bedside and watch as the Contessa performs a ceremony of inheritance over them. The women draw their last breaths as the assembled group watch on, and Beatrice is surprised to see a vision of the god Mithras himself before her as the world fades to black. On this, we go back to Vico, who is in fact a prince named Livio. He stealthily makes his way back to the palace, where his grandmother, the Contessa, awaits him in his room. She cleans his wounds from the earlier fight and impresses on him the importance of his station, before passing along some very tragic news. Livio's cousin Constance, who had been heir to the throne, has died, leaving Livio to be next in line. Now we go back to Beatrice, who has woken up from her ordeal. Her sisters and nurse stand over her, so glad that she is all right. The ritual has now been completed, and the triplets are now the official mask makers. Nurse, who practically raised Beatrice and her sisters, now must leave them to their training, and so she tells them where to find her before bidding them all a fond farewell. That night, Beatrice can't help but ponder what she and her sisters' lives might have been had they not been destined to their fate. Ophelia and Valentina, for their part, seem more or less resigned to their lot in life. Yet Beatrice can't help but wonder if the world holds something different for her. She should feel honored by the important role she has been given. So why does she instead feel trapped by it? As the book goes on, we follow Beatrice and Livio as they struggle with the expectations that have been placed on them. As heir to the throne of the Wishes, Livio can no longer escape to the freedom of the streets in the guise of Vico. The fate of his people is now directly on his shoulders, and whoever had been behind the Sandwolf attacks and graffiti may soon be bringing war to his very doorstep. For Beatrice, she must find a way to come to terms with her new position as a mask maker. She and her sisters are now expected to labor every day in their new workshop, with very little contact with the outside world. What's more, the importance of their work means that she's confined to her duties for the rest of her life and constantly at risk of assassination by political opponents. Both Livio and Beatrice trapped by their circumstances in very different ways. Both are people of incredible importance to their society who wish for something more than the fate they have been given to them. Neither of them feels qualified for the enormous responsibility that has been suddenly placed on their shoulders. Yet, as danger draws nearer, they must find a way to embrace the power and save their people. It looks like we need to step away for just a moment, dear book nerds. But don't worry, we'll be right back after this very quick break. Please don't go anywhere.
Are you an author, fellow podcaster, or small business owner looking to spread the word about your product or service? Then let us help you. We offer a number of affordable monthly advertising packages in various price ranges. So if you'd like to hear your ad here in future episodes, please head on over to our page at ko-fi.com/bndpod and click on the shop tab to see what works best for you. Again, that's ko-fi.com/bndpod. Then click on the shop tab. We can't wait to work with you.
The book We Are Bound by Stars first came to my attention as I was doing my usual patrol of the Overdrive app for the next reads to cover on this podcast. I naturally headed straight for the fantasy offerings, and out of thousands of choices that were listed, this one immediately stood out to me. After having read the story for myself, I can see why it appealed to me so deeply. When it comes to fantasy, I love a world in which magic follows a given set of rules. Wishing magic to be defined in this way may seem a bit counterproductive, as magic is supposed to defy the restrictions of what we believe is possible. I'll admit, being able to do anything you can think of through the power of magic alone, with no consequences, seems wonderful, but I think that having a framework for characters to work around makes things even more compelling for the narrative in the long run. For example, in the case of the book we covered back in episode 35, Splinters of Scarlet, by Emily Bain Murphy, using too much magic causes a person's blood to freeze to solid ice. In the book This Poison Heart, which we were talking about in episode 50, our main character is resistant to poisonous plants that might kill someone else she loves if she's not careful about how she handles them. In most cases, power comes with consequences and cannot be taken lightly. In We Are Bound by Stars, magic is enhanced through the wearing of special masks, which only the triplet mask makers can create. Each mask has its own unique set of abilities, which work in tandem with the abilities of the person wearing it. What's more, the true masks, as they are called, are only given to the Countess's most trusted guards and clerics, meaning that very few have access to them. There's also the strict rule refraining masks to be made in the likeness of a person. Doing so is a deep taboo and considered to be highly dangerous. Each of the 3 triplet mask makers is restricted to creating one of 3 distinct types of masks, known as ornamentals, bestials, and grotesques, and each of these types of masks has varying levels of power they bestow. This distribution of power via special masks definitely speaks to my inner theater nerd. In musicals and other types of performing arts, masks are used as a tool to enhance storytelling and draw the audience into their world. In this story, I love that this time-honored tool of actors is instead used for a much more serious purpose. I also noticed that another motif used a lot throughout the story is that of puppets and marionettes. Puppet shows are a beloved form of entertainment across the Kingdom of the Wishes, telling the epic tales of heroic deeds past. Beatrice's sister, Valentina, adores puppet shows and has her own puppet collection. When the previous mask makers pass away, they are described as being like marionettes cut from their strings. One of the book's most climactic scenes even happens during a puppet show. This motif of puppets and marionettes, I think, echoes how both Beatrice and Livio feel. They are not allowed to be themselves, and instead are seen as nothing more than puppets to be moved around by others. Just like the famous fictional puppet Pinocchio, they must cast away their strings and become the people they wish to be. Overall, I love that We Are Bound by Stars is brimming with magic, but also provides a powerful statement about finding your own voice. It's one part fairy tale, one part political thriller, and all parts immense fun. It's a great treat to get wrapped up in the lore of the Wishes, which you get into in the very beginning, as well as the rich inner lives of the people who live there. If you're looking for some pure fantasy escapism that's twisty and a bunch of fun, then here is a book that might be perfect for you. I will reiterate here that, as always, some elements might not be for everyone. As such, we hope that you'll check out the content warnings in our show notes before checking it out for yourself. With that, dearest book nerds, we have reached the end of our discussion for today. As always, thank you so much for stopping by to pay a visit here at the library. It really means the world to us. Before we say goodbye for now, we would just like to give out some very special thank yous. Firstly, our thanks, as always, goes out to Julie, our amazing sister Katie, and Anthony for being our incredible subscribers over at patreon.com/bndpod. It's our dream to be able to create this podcast full-time one day, and it's the contributions of kind souls like you that bring us closer to making that dream come true. If you too would like to get perks like early ad-free episodes, 2 exclusive episodes a month, notes, scripts, our monthly newsletter, and a special role in our Discord server, we hope you'll join them. We are also incredibly grateful to anyone who has subscribed to our show via their favorite app, left us a review on Apple Podcasts or their app of choice if it's available, or told the people in their lives about us. These are the very best free ways to help support the show and help bring more people into the library. Independent operations like ours depend on word of mouth to grow, so every bit truly helps. Next week, Friday, August 26th, a new bonus episode is on the way for our wonderful $5 and up subscribers on Patreon, and we'll see you right back here in 2 weeks for another edition of the Book Nerd Diaries. See you then. The Book Nerd Diaries is written, edited, researched, and hosted by me, Amber Wiltgen. Thank you so much to the wonderful astrofreq from Pixabay for the use of our theme song, The Grand Entrance. All other music and sound effects you may have heard during this episode are also provided by the amazing folks of Pixabay, so please check out the show notes for full credits. If you wish to connect with us online, please follow us on Instagram or Twitter at BNDpod, on Facebook at Book Nerd Diaries, or via our website at bndpod.wordpress.com. If you have any comments, questions, or ideas for future episodes to send my way, please feel free to drop us an email anytime at bndpod@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, everyone, please be good to yourselves, because the world needs you. And don't forget to support your local library.